There are 7 parts in a set, 6 sets per class, and 14 classes in the game, which equals 588 legendary parts that you could be chasing. It's important to know which ones you need to be going after so you don't waste time grinding for parts that are basically unnecessary. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly which parts you need, which parts are nice to have, and which parts you shouldn't worry about at all. Let's go! Real quick before we get into the video, if you're looking for any of my Motorfest tunes, you can go to militiagamingco.com, click on Motorfest Pro settings at the top, and you'll be redirected to our tunes app that has all of my tunes and some other tunes from the community. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about the 6 legendary parts sets first. The set is defined by the set bonus that is on that part. That is the 3rd symbol shown on the top right of the part image. That set bonus cannot be changed or re-rolled, and it's only active when all 7 parts on your car contain it. The possible set bonuses are Nitro Chemist, Loot Digger, Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, Score Breaker, and Treasure Sniffer. Now, if you look at each of those parts and take a look at the set bonus on the far right, it tells you exactly what those bonuses do. Some sets are completely irrelevant to certain classes, so let's break it down per class. Also, side note, none of these parts are necessary for grand races. All cars for all players in the grand races are equipped with fully leveled up green parts. In terms of PvP, legendary part sets are only really necessary for the weekly summits. Alright, starting with Street 1 and Street 2. The only set bonus that you'll need for these 2 classes is Nitro Chemist with Pure and Extra Pump. It's the one that you're going to be using the most often, especially in summit events. And you'll actually see a running theme with this set. It's the most valuable set for basically all of the classes. There are a few sets that are nice to have though. Bucks Magnet with Rich and Legend is great for grinding money, especially if there's a certain street event that you like to race. XP Magnet is great to have with Rich and Legend on weeks where streetcars are the main stage bonus, meaning with streetcars you get extra XP. This is great for grinding XP on the playlist, the PvP, and the Explorer timelines. And Treasure Sniffer is nice to have as well, with Lucky and Treasure Collector if you're still grinding legendary parts, or Treasure Collector and Legend if you don't need any legendary parts. Treasure Collector actually makes treasure a lot easier to find because there's more of it, and Legend will give you more XP. Lucky just makes the value of that treasure a little bit greater. The 2 unnecessary sets for Street 1 and Street 2 are Loot Digger and Score Breaker. Score Breaker you're never going to use with Street 1 or Street 2 because there are a lot faster road cars in the game that you need Score Breaker on instead of on a street car. And Loot Digger really isn't necessary unless you get lucky enough to get a set of it before you've gotten your other sets. The best set in these 2 categories is definitely Nitro Chemist, so if you don't have that yet, then obviously if you get Loot Digger, that's a big bonus for you. But the whole thing is RNG, and from my experience, Loot Digger doesn't drop at a faster rate than any of the other sets. In fact, it's usually one of the last couple of sets that I'm able to complete when I'm grinding a specific category for legendary parts. It's super annoying, and it makes Loot Digger completely unnecessary and irrelevant to basically all of the classes in the game. Like I said though, if you do get lucky enough to have it drop early, then obviously it shortens your legendary parts grind, and if you do get it, you're going to be looking for the Affixes, Lucky, and Goldfinger. Alright, moving into the drift category, the only one that you absolutely need is the Nitro Chemist set bonus with Pure and Extra Pump. The reason this is the only one that you're going to need is because Nitro Chemist comes in handy a lot when it comes to racing. Now, there's not a lot of drift racing events, but oftentimes when the summit requires a drift car, it's actually making you do a race with a drift car as opposed to an actual drift trial. Now, if it is a drift trial, you don't really need a set. The only thing you need is the Affixes, Slippery, and Hothead, and those can be applied to any of the sets. So my suggestion is have the Nitro Chemist with Pure and Extra Pump, and then if you can have a second Nitro Chemist with Slippery and Hothead, that's great, but any 7 legendary parts with Slippery and Hothead will do. The sets that are completely unnecessary are basically everything else: Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, Loot Digger, Score Breaker, and Treasure Sniffer. Alright, moving into the racing category, there are 3 different sets that you're going to need, and they're all the same set bonus. You're going to need Nitro Chemist with Pure and Extra Pump for most of your summit events. That's the most valuable one for the category. And then Nitro Chemist with Pure and Iron Grip. Now this is for summit events where the tire grip wear is active. Doing those summit events without Iron Grip is basically death to your score. You have to have Iron Grip because it allows you to last a lot longer out on the track without having to come in for a pit stop, and you can imagine pit stops are very detrimental to your times. And then the third set bonus that you're going to be looking for is also Nitro Chemist, but with Pure and Bended. Now this is a little bit controversial because you could probably just use Pure and Extra Pump, but Bended is actually really good for summit events that are bike specific in the racing category, and we have had a few of those already since the launch. All right, there are a few sets that are nice to have as well. Bucks Magnet is a nice set to have, and I would put that with Rich and Legend, and the same thing with XP Magnet. I would also put that with Rich and Legend. And then it is kind of nice to have a Treasure Sniffer set with Lucky and Treasure Collector if you're still grinding for legendary parts and you like to look for treasure. And then if you don't need any legendary parts, it is nice to have Treasure Collector and Legend because you can use that on weeks where racing cars are the main stage bonus, and it's good for grinding XP on your Explorer timeline. Remember, if you're opening treasure boxes, that gives you a lot of XP towards that Explorer timeline. It's one of the best ways to do it. There are treasure maps all over the internet, and we do have one in our Discord server as well. So if you join and look at the crew channel, there's a pinned comment with a map for all the treasure locations. Now the two sets that are completely unnecessary are once again Loot Digger, unless you get it first, and Score Breaker. I guess Score Breaker could be useful though if you don't have it on the Hyper or AGP. If you do have it on one of those classes, then it is completely useless in the racing category. But if you do have it and it's the only category where you have Score Breaker, then you're going to want Pure and Skilled as your affixes. All right, moving into the Dragster category, the only one that you absolutely need is Nitro Chemist with Pure and Frenetic. The reason you want Frenetic is because you're really only using Dragsters for speed traps and or drag events, in which case you only get one chance to pop your NOS. You don't need Extra Pump because Extra Pump just helps with your NOS refill, and you're not going to be refilling your NOS on any of those types of events. So Frenetic makes the NOS more powerful the longer you use it. It's like a one-shot giant burst of NOS for your entire tank. And basically every other set for Dragster is unnecessary, with the exception of Loot Digger. Like I said, if you get that first, if you don't have Nitro Chemist and you get Loot Digger first, obviously that's going to help you with your grind, and for that you're going to want Lucky and Goldfinger. Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, Score Breaker, and Treasure Sniffer are all unnecessary. All right, moving into the Hypercar class. Now the only one that you're really going to need is Nitro Chemist with Pure and Extra Pump, but it is nice to have Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, and Treasure Sniffer for all the same reasons that I listed on previous cars. The unnecessary sets for Hypercar are for sure Loot Digger and Score Breaker. Again, Score Breaker is nice to have if you don't have it on AGP or Racing, then it's nice to have it here on Hypercar. And the affixes you're going to want on Score Breaker are Pure and Skilled. All right, moving into the Alpha Grand Prix. There are 3 different sets you'll need for Alpha Grand Prix. The number one and the most important one is Score Breaker. This is the class you should be using for all of your summit, slalom, or feat events where Score Breaker is active, and you're going to want Pure and Skilled. Alpha Grand Prix with Score Breaker is completely broken. It's absolutely the best set to have for the class because the car is so fast and so grippy, it just makes slalom so easy. The next set you're going to want is Nitro Chemist with Pure and Extra Pump. This is what you're going to be using on any summit events that are races, and to be honest, the Chemist is not 100% necessary because the cars are actually pretty fast and they get up to speed quickly. The other set you'll need though is Nitro Chemist with Pure and Iron Grip. Iron Grip, remember, is only where the grip wear modifier is active on the summit events, so don't worry too much about that, but if you can get it, it is definitely needed for those events. Now some sets that are nice to have are the same as before: Bucks Magnet with Rich and Legend, XP Magnet with Rich and Legend, and Treasure Sniffer with Lucky and Treasure Collector if you're still grinding, or Treasure Collector and Legend if you are not grinding. And then the only set that's completely unnecessary for this class is Loot Digger. So let's move on to Motocross. In Motocross, you really only need one set, and that's Nitro Chemist with Pure and Extra Pump. But it is kind of nice to have a Nitro Chemist set with Pure and Bended for these summit events that are bike specific, although it's kind of unclear which one is going to be better in Motocross, so it's going to take a little more testing on my part. Is it better to have Bended or is it better to have Extra Pump? At this point, we don't really know because it just hasn't been tested that much, but like I said, this is nice to have just in case. You also could use Score Breaker with Pure and Skilled. There's a small chance that you can get an off-road feat where a bike is faster, and in that case, it would be nice to have that. The unnecessary sets for motocross are Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, Treasure Sniffer, and Loot Digger. All right, moving on to Rally and Rally Raid. These are both the same. Basically, you're gonna need Nitro Chemist with Pure and Extra Pump, just like the others. And then it's kind of nice to have a Nitro Chemist set with Pure and Bended for the off-road bike-specific events. Again, although it's kind of unclear which one is going to be better, so I just put this in the nice to have category. It's also nice to have Score Breaker with Pure and Skilled, and that's going to be for the off-road feats in the summit events. And then the same as some of the other classes, Bucks Magnet with Rich and Legend, XP Magnet with Rich and Legend, and then Treasure Sniffer with Lucky and Treasure Collector if you're still grinding for legendaries, and Treasure Collector and Legend if you don't need any legendaries for the class. Loot Digger, again, is completely unnecessary for this class unless it drops first. All right, moving into Demolition. The only one that you actually need is Nitro Chemist with Pure or Extra Pump, and then Bulldozer. Bulldozer actually increases your impact, so it's nice to have in those Demolition events. And then for the nice to have category, it would be nice to have a Nitro Chemist set with Pure and Extra Pump, just for the off chance that there's a summit event that requires a Demolition car, but it's actually a race. A lot of times they will mix up events like that, and it'd be nice to have this just in the back pocket. So if you end up grinding Demolition parts, go for 2 sets of Nitro Chemist with Extra Pump and Pure, and then either Pure and Extra Pump or Bulldozer. The unnecessary sets for this class are Loot Digger, Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, Treasure Sniffer, and Score Breaker. All right, moving into Monster Truck. Now for this one, you really only need Nitro Chemist with Pure and Extra Pump. The unnecessary sets are Loot Digger, Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, Score Breaker, and Treasure Sniffer. Like I said, you could use Loot Digger if it drops first and you don't have Nitro Chem yet. Otherwise, it's completely unnecessary. And for that one, definitely run Lucky and Goldfinger. And lastly, for Powerboats and Planes, you're going to need 2 sets. The Nitro Chemist set with Pure and Extra Pump, and the Score Breaker set with Pure and Skilled. They both come in handy. Having Score Breaker on boats and planes is completely OP for those events, and we do get feats from time to time where you need to use a boat or a plane, and Score Breaker is extremely broken. It basically guarantees you a near max point result on those events, provided you don't make any significant mistakes. So those are extremely necessary. Score Breaker is the most valuable set, and then it's really nice to have Nitro Chemist. Now, it also is nice to have Treasure Sniffer for planes, because you can find treasure really easily. You don't have to be close to the ground. You can just fly over the map, and when your radar starts beeping, you can just fly down to that location and grab that treasure. It's nice if you're still grinding legendary parts or you need to get some XP for your Explorer timeline. The unnecessary sets for boats and planes is Loot Digger, Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, and Treasure Sniffer. All right, hopefully this information has helped you a little bit in your grind in the Crew Motorfest. If it has, please consider subscribing. About 75% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and it really does help me out when it comes to the algorithm. So please do consider subscribing. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will catch you on the next one. Trigger out.